science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Bonjour, bodacious, boundless buddies. This is Exofathom, and today we are going to talk about boundless immortality. Yeah, but first, let me introduce my co-hosts. I've got Nick and Mike here on the podcast. How are you guys doing?
Happy Monday. Doing pretty good.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday to you.
I'm hanging in there. I'm doing all right. There's a little bit of a downer today, but it's okay. It was a
downer.
There's this lady that lives down the street that I've been walking by on my way to, Starbucks on my caffeine routine for like the last 10 years. And it's just like this old lady, and I've walked by every day and kind of like we've shared pleasantries, said hi. But today I was walking back and I looked and they were cleaning out her apartment and throwing away all of her stuff. And I got a little sad, but it was going to happen.
Oh no! Do you think she passed?
I don't think she's immortal.
Right.
Yeah, I get it.
Time.
Well, does she have a name?
No, I never learned her name. She was just the old lady who would always stand outside or like peer out the window. Lady.
Well, this has been fun. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Happy to bring everyone down.
I have the
your
best
Monday
intro.
Going
now the tone. I mean, well, we all die. And
it's on topic.
Life is but a spring and an eternal winter. No, I'm okay. And that didn't bum me out. I mean, that is something to be sad about. But as we might find out in this show, she could be eternal somewhere. Depends on how you look at things, maybe. So
all I can say is cheers to the old Labor Nady.
Cheers to the old
Labor Nady.
Yep.
Labor Nady.
Old neighbor lady. Old. I can't even do it anymore.
OPNL. Opnal. Opnal? To opnal, everybody. To opnal. Well, okay, let's talk about immortality, because I think that humans could maybe or already live forever. So to get this conversation started, if you could be immortal, would you do it and why? And I'll go ahead and share the two follow-up questions, which is, would it matter if everybody else was also immortal? And would you still do it if you couldn't take it back?
I mean, the only drawback to immortality is that you don't have it to spend with other people. So if everybody was immortal, hell yeah, of course I would take that. And, you wouldn't have to deal with the loss of generations upon generations of people that, I guess that's one of the drawbacks for me. But yeah, there's always a side of me that's like, man, that'd be kind of cool. Just continue into
everything.
Infinity. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you about one of my biggest regrets.
Oh, here we go.
Becoming immortal.
Mr. Downer. No, I'm just kidding.
See, there was this lady down the block from me.
Yeah.
In the other direction, mind you.
Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm your weekly Monday downer, Monday melancholic. Yeah,
you're just the Garfield of the podcast. That's all.
Yes,
and it just so happens that we do it on your least favorite day.
When I went to Melancholics Anonymous, that's what they would call me, Melancholic Mike. So
nice.
It worked.
Hi, I'm Mike. Yeah. I'm a melancholic.
Hi, Mike. Well, on Mondays, I might partake, except for today, because if anybody out there is a diehard listener and you remember my past couple shows, I did not have a great intro. And so, bonjour, bodacious, boundless buddies. I was very proud of that.
Now I just feel like a ruiner of all the things.
Mm.
That's
Just
okay.
walking
I'm
around
balancing
ruining
it
stuff.
out.
No, it was a great opening.
Thank you.
I don't know though. I don't know if I would want to be immortal because it's one of those things that seems really nice on the surface, and then you start to play it out towards infinity, and it doesn't
Mhm.
seem good anymore. Like, even if everyone else is, how are we got to get off this rock somehow? We have to go find other places to live because, like, the sun exploding is going to be a thing, right? Or imploding, or like over millions of years, and it just becomes laborsome to live. I feel like, and then even like your motivation to do stuff, like if you did everything possible, you eventually would get bored with living, and then you just couldn't check out. Like if immortality came with the clause that you could die whenever you chose fit, then I would do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would reckon that you'd probably become a dictator pretty quickly.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Melancholic Mike, probably.
No, I mean, I think anybody after about 500 years of living
Oh.
life, I think that you would turn on humanity.
You're like, I'm tired of
Yeah.
this.
Tired of all of it. And it's funny
Mhm.
too, because when you think about immortality, are you talking about invulnerability too? Because if you do get to witness the expansion of the sun and swallowing of the earth, does that mean
Well, now
you're
you're
just
just
floating in
floating.
space for
Hoping one day
eternity?
you'll land on an exoplanet.
That would suck.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that too, because right, like in X-Men, you have Wolverine, and he has regenerative abilities, which means that he's not aging, or he does just age
Ages
slowly.
slow.
Is that
Yeah.
it's a little different.
He still
Yeah.
ages, just very slowly.
Right. Well, and I think the key feature of immortality is you don't die. So mechanisms to make you dead wouldn't work. So you would have to be impervious.
I think
right?
there's two types of immortality. You're talking about like the immortality of, like, say, the elves. The elves can be immortal and then decide to diminish whenever they want to, but they can also be slain. So there is kind of like a distinction between invulnerability and I guess you would consider invincibility, because that would envelop immortality as well.
There it is. Invincibility. If I'm spelling that correctly, that is a word that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eyes in it. So if anybody asks you for a word with 5 eyes, that's a good try. I think it's interesting what Mike said about kind of like wanting to be able to have that exit, because there are a lot of folks who would criticize immortality as just being too much time, as not as like it would get the law of diminishing returns or something like that. But I think that there's another group of people who think that we are immortal, but our bodies aren't. And I don't know. I mean, I guess that would push towards the existence of a soul, which is kind of interesting that, we could have an immortal soul. And does that make us feel better? If we were immortal in the human world, would that deny us a greater immortality?
Yeah, now you're getting into whether the transhumanism is some sort of Luciferian, like, psychic matrix that is keeping human souls on Earth instead of letting them be absolved back into the absolute.
Is that what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Put a lot of words in my mouth, sir.
I know, right? So what you're saying is,
you're like, yeah. I'm thinking of Parks and Recreation, that Brandy porn star character who's always like, what Leslie and I are trying to say, and Leslie's like, no, I'm a politician.
Yeah. But no, I mean, yeah.
Maybe so, but I mean, if you really enjoy this place, if you really enjoy like living, because there's a book called Einstein's Dreams, and it kind of tackles this one in like a short story. And it follows this thing about there are like two groups of people that one group does everything possible and the other group does nothing at all. And both sides seem to equally enjoy this realm. So like if you really enjoy it, then what is this greater immortality, and why would you, like, it doesn't have to be Luciferian. It could just be comfortable.
Or it's just a big gamble. I mean, you think about it, like if science progressed to a point where you could choose to be immortal or not, it's kind of a gamble either way, wouldn't you say? To stay here forever and deny yourself like what's behind curtain number 2, or to give up everything and then slide into nothingness or the unknown or something
yeah,
amazing.
But it might be a rational thing, unless you're saying like immortality is like the 3-card Monty of these sorts of ideas. You find it's just a big scam and everything just looks better to slip away. It seems more rational to want to stick around. Because in theory, you could solve all of the problems in this realm given an infinite amount of time.
Yeah.
Which might go the dictator route, because eventually you would just feel like you have the right answer for everybody.
Yeah, well, hopefully you would gain the wisdom, though, to see that that's not true.
You think you'd have a couple genocidal phases and then mellow out a little bit.
God.
Kind of like when you're a teenager and you're
hands.
acting crazy. Yeah.
Oh man. Right. Well, and it'd be weird to think about it in terms of like an immortal who's still aging, maybe very slowly, but time-wise, yeah, would that mean that, like, let's say, yeah, gosh, if you're like immortal, then maybe the first millennia is your infanthood.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And as you're drifting out into space is when you finally become like an adolescent and you're looking for your exoplanet and on this big journey.
Yeah, you're just scaling out the length of time for a human life cycle. So if you lived to infinity, your adolescent years would be trillions of years.
Hold on, slow down. Is it a countable infinity or an uncountable?
I would assume it's a countable infinity, because the universe will eventually cease to exist. So, at some point in the future, the universe won't be. So I don't know if you'll be able to still stick around.
You got to break.
I don't know what that would be like.
Yeah, right. When what is it? When an unstoppable force hits an unmovable object or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole
man.
universe just dissipates, and then you're floating in this like weird grid.
I would like to think I'd take the Deadpool route and just become the most absurd of absurdist to ever absurd. I think that's where I would want to go.
Yeah,
if you could get the grid laughing.
If you can get the invincibility route, why wouldn't you fling yourself out of a plane without a parachute?
Well, he still hurt himself. He still broke bones and things.
Only for like 30 seconds, though. It's all good.
It grows back. But I like what Nick, the tiny hand. Nick, I like what you said about how the universe isn't immortal. That was like a section I had later on, but I mean, it's not a big one. It's just like 2 sentences. And it said that scientists expect the universe will end, which puts an immediate dampener on a mystery about the potential for human immortality. Some scientists have speculated about surviving the death of the universe. As journalist John Horgan reported for Scientific American, but it's unlikely that any humans alive today will experience the universe's demise anyway. Just kind of an easy way of saying, don't even worry about it. Yeah.
Oh, that would be a spectacle, though. I might want to see that.
I mean, it would be kind of cool.
No. Like, it depends on how fast it happened. Yeah. No, it'd be pretty rad, but it would have to happen at such a slow rate that you could observe it. Because if it happened just like in a blink of an eye, then like
it would also depend on like the way the universe dies, right? Unless so if it's a crunch, you might see the entire universe just start careening towards you, over a long period of time. But if it's like a fizzle out, you would just have like the death of all of the stars around you, and then the slow decay of all of everything. It'd be kind of weird.
Well,
too.
that's wild, because I mean, yeah, how can the universe implode or crunch or whatnot, and then there's just this grid? Does that then mean that the grid is
I was just joking about the grid.
I mean, but it just can't disappear. Where would it go? I don't understand. Like,
well,
right?
According
like
to
when
Elon
people
Musk,
say,
according to Lord Emperor of Mars, Elon Musk, he thinks that the
He
universe
prefers
works.
to be called the Prince of Mars.
No, he'll be the king, God Emperor.
Oh God.
Yeah. No, he thinks that the universe exists on a substrate. So there's something under, like a dimension underneath the universe that it is being projected from, which is kind of
Oh,
like
and is
the
that also
simulation
gonna end?
holographic universe theory.
But
Well, that's the question, right? Who knows?
imagine like the amount of pain that you would have to go through to adapt to whatever's underneath this universe. Well, because like humans will adapt, like you can adapt to a different dimension, I would imagine, but that
You
might
just
take
get crushed
millions
into
of
like
years.
a flat line.
Yeah, and then you're just chilling for a bit until you get your, your next part of that dimension.
Your third
Yeah.
density back.
Yeah.
You're like a little conscious flea.
It's just a conscious flat line that can't see anything.
You could be like a little, like a wave, you could start to create curves. You start to
Make a circle, maybe.
Yeah, it'd be good times.
Make a circle, maybe. Well, it's funny that we talk about immortality the way that we do, because it can be broken down into different things, right? Like when we talked about invincibility, and would that be a requirement for immortality or part of it or separate? But also, it's this longing, I think, for more time. And there were two quotes that I thought were kind of interesting. The first one I did not write who it's from, but they said the blazing evidence of immortality is our dissatisfaction with any other solution, which is kind of a sidebar to think about. The real quote I meant to highlight was Susan Ertz. Millions long for immortality who do not know what to do with themselves on a Sunday afternoon. And I think that was kind of an interesting quote, because it's like, before you think about
so
immortality,
I need 1 billion years to figure it out. Come on.
Yeah.
You're being so unreasonable. Just because
That's
I don't
true,
know what I
right?
want to do on a Sunday. Okay, lady. Jeez.
Yeah.
What are you doing on a Sunday?
I'm an immortal toddler at this current moment in time. So what do you expect?
Is there though some like, because I always thought immortality was the desire of people that feared death. So there's this like latent fear of death, not so much like we want more time, or like why do we want more time? Because we don't want to die, because we don't know what's on the other side, sort of thing. And there's the alternative to immortality is just accepting. It's called the Dionysian appreciation of life. Once you've understood that you will die and you're okay with that, you appreciate life in a different way. Like you're happy that you don't know what to do with yourself on a Sunday. That sort of notion, rather than desiring more Sundays.
Certainly, that would be the healthier way to look at it. But I also think that I don't know if fear of death is always 100% of the drive. I think it might be the ultimate FOMO. It's I really do. I really do, because you got to think about it. Like, if you can project your mind out into the future and imagine what the world could be 1,000 years from now, there is a part of you that I think maybe laments the fact that you'll never get to see that future.
Yeah, but this also like prunes out a bunch of dystopian futures, right? Like, what if 1,000 years from now everybody turns into cannibals because we've ran out of food on?
Yeah, just wait another 1,000 years,
Mars.
you'll be all right.
Yeah, just hang out.
Yeah. Well, that's the luxury of time, right? You can see all things come to pass. Maybe it's a little bit more akin to wanting to be closer to godness, right? Because God is permanence. God is sort of this immortal concept, and perhaps we try to vault ourselves into that.
Ooh. If you were immortal and the world started to run out of food, would you allow people to eat parts of your body knowing that it would grow back?
Oh, if it grew back, sure.
Gross.
I'd set up a kebab stand.
You would just be like regenerating limbs to feed like 20 people at a time. My God.
Yeah, good. You're a hero.
It'll be enough people to perpetuate the humanity.
Just far enough to where we could find sustainable food again.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, I like Mike what you talked about in terms of the kind of like this acceptance. Maybe instead of this. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess you kind of said two things. One is this like fear of death. The other question I thought you asked was, why do we want more time?
Mhm.
And I think that's like that quote that I just read, because, and we did a whole episode on time, so I won't belabor this too much, but like, I do think a lot of it has to do with, yeah, just wanting more time. But what is that? Is that more experiences? Is that like kind of like Nick saying more experiences, including a future and what happens? Does more time give you more time with people you love? Because if they're not immortal too, it's not as, I mean, it's not going to be great after 100 years. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are
I think
any other
I think
reasons why?
well, I think it's the accumulation of a resource, right? It's like, so time can be the ultimate resource, whereas a biological imperative to accumulate as much resource as possible. Therefore, humans have this sort of innate desire to cheat death so that they can accumulate more time resource coins. You know,
So it's like it's human nature to hoard, even if
it's
that means
human
time.
nature to want to continue and progress. Yeah, and so I think that translates. It's too reductive to say consumption, because that's I think that has a negative connotation to it, but it is akin to a consumption of resource, and time is a resource, and so you could see that as a sort of drive to accumulate more.
And I don't know if it's necessarily true that you would like. I think this notion of not being able to spend all the time with the people you love is a negative, because we kind of experience that in daily life already with the comings and goings of friends, right? Or the comings and goings of intimate relationships,
Or even family members.
Family members. Yeah, like they could still be alive, but they're not in your life.
Right.
Or the best way, because it was one of the weirdest things that I came across when I ran into it in my adult life, was when somebody got fired or somebody quit. They go, "Oh, that person's no longer with us." I'm like, "Wait, they died?
Yeah.
Like, what happened?
Oh, man.
Whoa, slow down. What's going on?"
That
And they're
So
like,
corpo
serious.
speak.
"Yeah, like no, they're just not with the company." But in a
Mhm.
way, that person sort of died. They're no
They're
longer
dead to us.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not in that realm of existence anymore. So we go through this all the time.
Especially given the rule of proximity when it comes to relationships and friendships.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it may not necessarily, like, that might be one thing we imagine as being a detriment to immortality, but through a few generations of experiencing it, you're like, yeah, this is how it goes though. If like there was one group of people that was immortal versus people that were mortal. If anything, it might actually, in the optimistic sense, spur you to have more meaningful human connections.
Maybe.
You'd be very aware of the limited time you would have with that person.
Yeah. It gives you a lot of perspective, I would say.
One would hope
You would
that,
hope so.
or yeah, like the genocidal teenager, like, oh god,
Right. Yeah.
I got to spend another 90 years around this person. We're just gonna
Oh,
bury
no.
him. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, but I like the way that you addressed the avoidance of loss and just said like it is a natural part of our lives. So even if we were immortal or mortal, we're not going to be able to avoid that. So
Yeah.
good like check that off the negative list or the con list. Well now, okay, so moving on to pros and cons of immortality. Some people think it's a curse. Others think it's a blessing. Herb Cain had a quote I liked. I don't know who he is, so forgive me if he's some evil person. But the quote says, "The only thing wrong
Famous
with
Nazi.
Oh shit! Now, no, wait.
No, it's not.
Okay, I
It's
don't want to
not.
know. I
I
don't
was
want to know.
kidding.
Okay.
Hey, the Nazis gave us rockets, all right? So,
Yeah.
you gotta take the good with the bad.
It's
Can't always.
uncomfortable. No, I don't like that word. Okay. The quote
Apparently, was
is
an artist. I'll continue. I'm sorry.
You just can't use that word. It's just so like it hurts my soul. Okay, the only thing wrong with immortality is that it tends to go on forever. So Herb offers that, like, yeah, I mean, think about it. Like if you were at the DMV, it
How
takes a long
glib.
time you're stuck there. Yeah, I know. That's a case where you don't want to be there. But eventually, yeah, I mean, like, do you think it would become a curse? I kind of feel like it would, especially if the universe would die. But that would be cool to see. But like, you can't talk about it with anybody. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you could still enjoy it, but
the thing would be the physical pain of being around when the universe ended, right? Like if you didn't have to feel pain and lived forever, physical pain, then you might be fine because even if everything gets condensed down, you won't feel it. But if you felt it, that would suck because you don't know how long the universe isn't going to exist until it does again.
yeah, like you get arthritis and then you become immortal, and like the whole rest of your immortal life, you're just suffering with.
And then you get sprayed out into another big bang, all your particles across the universe, and you have to wait for eternity to conglomerate your atoms back together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or
wow,
even
you
worse,
took it there.
like imagine if somebody this actually happens in I believe in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. It's a short run comic series where Deadpool doesn't kill Wolverine, but he submerges him underwater and allows his lungs to burst over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So if some bad actor knew you were immortal, they could torture you for infinity. And then that's what I would imagine being stuck in the universe after it ended would be like, where you would have, or even after Earth ended and we didn't find a way off the planet, where you would have to suffer the tortures of space until you found an exoplanet or until your body adapted to space.
Which might take
Yeah.
a few million years.
Yeah, and I don't know, like even if you got
go.
used to the pain, it's still not like a fun experience.
Well, yeah, and it'd probably be boring too. It's not like you're going to be watching HBO and getting tortured your whole life. Like, it's just not going to happen.
And you better hope that you have a little jetpack on when the Earth explodes, because if you don't, you're just going to be floating in nothingness.
And you only got so many farts to propel you around
I was
the
gonna
edge of
say
space.
you hoard like a whole bunch of those air cans to clean your keyboard with, and you're like, hopefully this will be enough.
Look, I got Brussels sprouts for like a few decades. That's my plan.
that really fills up the farts too. So before we get into some like lore, I was going to just touch briefly on some mythology and then some modern research that's been going on about not so much immortality, but at least prolonging our existence.
Before we go on, what do we think? Is it a blessing or a curse?
I think it's a curse.
Blurse.
It's a blurst.
A blurse.
A blurse.
Yeah.
It's both.
No.
All right,
What
Homer
you said.
Simpson.
it's a blurse.
This lousy smarch weather.
Yeah.
I guess I'm on the side of a curse, much more than a blessing.
Yeah.
Which
I
is
guess
funny because
depends on how you use it.
Well, I was gonna say it's kind of funny when you think about like Mercutio yelling at Romeo and Tybalt like a plague upon your houses. Like he could be wishing them immortality if we think of immortality as a curse, which we don't usually think of. But like I kind of feel like more they do. Mm-hmm. They're very self-conscious about their immortality.
Mm-hmm. Some really enjoy it though. Some go like real dark and just start going crazy.
Yeah. The usual progression of the ancient vampires, though, is that they eventually realize it for the curse that it is.
Yeah. I guess you're right. Like if you were a dictator, or if everyone knew you were immortal and you became like the wise oracle, then maybe you could steer intelligent species, not just humans, but whatever we find, in like a good and proper, or in a good way at least. But that's a very dangerous, like you're walking on like a razor's edge of reason, and one false step will ruin everything.
Yeah, just follow me, guys. I know the answer. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's the type of responsibility that's terrifying. And then you run into the problem of maybe even being like a Cassandra-esque character, where even if you know the future, say you in your infinite time, you built a computer that can tell all of the events that will happen, given all the inputs of the world, of every species that you interact with within a thing. There's no guarantee that the governing populace would accept that or even listen to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because even if you did prove it to a certain governing populace, within one generation, it would be forgotten again.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
just have to keep reminding humanity.
Or you have
Oh,
to
man.
solve the problem of forgetting.
Or you just create a religion about yourself, which is kind of the way to go. And then you just
Nick.
you usher the world into your religion, and then you'll have your, the belief in you perpetuated for, enough
Forever.
time, forever,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you want to.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and religion covers the soul, and that's a good segue into this little section of quotes I wanted to share, because some believe that our souls are eternal, and when we die, we get to claim our true bodacious mortality or immortality. So Pluto himself, the man. I don't know why I introduced Nick Pluto himself, like he's this celebrity, like silly.
Pluto the
Better than
god
how
or
they've been
Plato?
dissing him.
Plato.
Okay, Pluto's.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Pluto,
right.
Oh, Pluto.
the ninth planet.
I think I had a
I'll
typo there.
fight you if you call it a subplanet.
I mean, is there anybody named Pluto? I'm pretty sure this is Plato. Okay.
Yeah, Pluto is the Roman god of death, assuming it's Hades, or god of
So
the
he
underworld.
wouldn't have a quotation, right? Like that would
Probably
be
not.
filtered through here. Okay. So
I
that's
think he
Plato. But okay, whoever's listening, if this quote that I'm about to speak in a moment is not from Plato, you can send us an email and Nick will make you a fabulous exo coin.
Thanks for signing me up for that.
Yeah,
All right.
that's awesome. It's made of wood. And we'll tell more about it later.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
It's so cute. It's really a nice little thing. Okay, here's the quote. The soul of a man is immortal and imperishable. Pretty sure it's Plato, but prove me wrong, you get a coin. There's a couple other quotes I wanted to share. Death is the beginning of immortality. There's another one that says, what is life? It is the flash of a firefly in the night. It is the breath of a buffalo in the wintertime. It is the little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. Which I kind of like that quote because it's almost saying like our humanity is our mortality. That you can't really separate the two, which is interesting. Then the next quote is, if you were to destroy in mankind the belief in immortality, not only love, but every living force maintaining the life of the world would at once be dried up. Moreover, nothing then would be immoral. Everything would be lawful, even cannibalism. That's the brothers Karamazov. And I think these quotes are all kind of interesting because they talk about, one, the importance of a soul, the importance of believing in a eternal afterlife, as well as the information of us claiming our identity as mortal beings. All very interesting stuff to me, I think.
Well, eternal beings wrapped in a mortal coil.
There it is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you want me to play devil's advocate real quick?
Sure.
All of this is opium for the masses.
Mm.
Karl Marx would agree with you. Yeah.
Such an awful thing to say.
Yeah.
Such an awful.
It's just reductionist.
It sounds like something an immortal might say.
Maybe.
Who then decided to become a...
Hey, if Karl Marx is immortal, let me find him. I got some words. I just want to talk to him. I just want to talk to him.
Karl Marx would definitely have Cheeto dust on his fingers.
Haven't even leveled up in the level of the basement dweller to learn how to not get Cheetos on your fingers.
Yeah. Nope. But no, I think there's so we're talking about religion as a sort of or a belief in an eternal spirit as a sort of check on the human will, right? So it's the baser animal fighting with the higher man sort of thing that happens in every human. We have that sort of dualness to us. And I think sort of vaulting the promise of eternity post-death did do well, like, to be not for naught. I think that there is a certain level of truth in the opium of the masses, because I do definitely believe that it quelled a lot of poor human behavior to sort of guarantee an afterlife in which all of your dreams will come true and forego immediate pleasure for something more long term. So, I mean, I think it serves as an important tool.
But you can also look at art in the same way, right? Like
Art.
death is the beginning of immortality. So, like, think about, we all know the Plato, Shakespeare, Pluto, if you go with the mythological route, but if it's a work of art, whoever came up with those mythologies are secondhand immortal. Even to a lesser extent, us doing this podcast, we're immortal. As long as the servers stay up, as long as we have electricity running, somebody can watch this long after we're dead. And not know we're dead, but think of us as being alive and at least gain up some bits of immortality. Looks up, Ayla?
I'm legit having the hashtag exofathom on my tombstone. Just putting that out there. Ayla, rest in peace. Hashtag exofathom.
Just put hashtag blessed
my
on there
last
too.
quote will be like, smash that subscribe button.
Give some underworld coin. Donate underworld coin to help us through our travels. But no, like, religion is important because it does curb like the worst parts of humanity. You're right in that, and it is sort of a drug to feel good. I mean, I've been in some hard moments in my life and have turned to faith, whether it be organized or not, an organized religion or spirituality, if you want to try to lay out that false spectrum. But art too does the same thing, just basically putting yourself into a work that does suspend that instant gratification for something later in a higher sense helps out so much. And once you die, from an artistic sense, all you have left are the works that you've left behind. Right. Whether, and it doesn't matter if they're inauthentic to you or authentic to you, that becomes you. And that's your key to immortality.
Right. The real death is being forgotten.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a harsh reality that I think a lot of people face. And that I think that propels the pursuit for longevity and extra long human life and transhumanism. All of that stems from that sort of feeling.
I'll present a counter argument though, that
Can I add?
Go for it.
Well, is your counter argument going to veer us into a different direction, or is it going to stay on this thread?
How the hell am I supposed to know? What vector are we on?
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking about kind of this like figurative immortality, and Nick brought up this idea of remembrance. And I was actually talking to Nick about this the other day because I was thinking about Cleopatra. And like, okay, so we all know who she is. This person is remembered. Is it benefiting Cleopatra in any way? I mean, like, one, if Cleopatra as an eternal soul exists somewhere, is there any profit from us knowing who she is? Because I guess, it feels good to want to be remembered. But once you're dead...
One, yes. There's a huge benefit with regards to in my opinion, the strength of the feminine qualities of conscious beings. Because she pretty much ran the world. And it was through her intelligence, her cunning, and through her beauty that she was able to do it. And if those start to erode away within the world, you're going to run into a very brutish existence that it's like you have to have cunning in the world. Cunning is super important. And
so you're saying that her essence, essentially, the remembrance of her informs and shapes our decisions and world and psyche today.
through subconscious channels. Yes. Which brings me to my second point, which ties the two together, is that um, existence is a necessary condition for immortality, but remembrance is a sufficient condition. So, like the deeds of Cleopatra had to exist, which makes her necessarily immortal. Just like if you dig some digging and found like lesser known pharaohs or something like that. But the remembrance is that's great. Like that's what kind of binds everything together. And with Cleopatra in particular, if you are skilled enough, you can take her ideas or take the path that she took and change them a bit and apply them to your own life and start to gain power if you're the type that wants to gain power.
Well, and yeah, I think it's interesting, kind of the way that you're like reframing that. I was also thinking just like a couple convos ago that like the eternal soul, religion, opiate or not, true or not. I don't know that I could make a decision either way, mostly because we haven't untangled consciousness in a way that I feel is satisfactory. Um, and I think that's always given me a bit of a pause when I think about like this kind of idea of maybe some sort of eternal afterlife or existence or something. But yeah, time will tell, I guess. Nick, any follow up thoughts about Cleopatra? Or
No, I think it's all basically right. I think that there's a big difference. Well, I mean, I don't know necessarily if there's a difference in the psyche for the human involved, but it's legacy is a good substitute for immortality. And
well said.
it might be the only workaround that we have right now. Maybe technology and things will change in the future, but for our current iteration of human, legacy is the immortality. So yeah, having the remembrance really is the thing that the person is going for, and usually the harder the drive for that remembrance, the greater the deed the person does. Now that deed may be bad or good, because you can go, from one end to the spectrum or the other. But I do think that there is that desire for imprinting upon the world that propels people to do great things and also terrible things. And so if you didn't have that deep desire, you might not even have the ability to imprint yourself on the world.
Yeah, and to clarify, I guess this particular solution to the problem with immortality, it's like computer scientists, when they approach a problem that is difficult or challenging, there's one route you can take on trying to solve the problem, and that's by relaxing the problem, letting one or two conditions go. So for this question of immortality, the condition I'm letting go is death. Like
your physical body.
Yeah, your physical body. You get to die. Or your physical body does, but your essence and your soul will be remembered through works of art, through deeds, through history, whatever, what have you. And that's my approach to this sort of thing when it comes to someone like Cleopatra, because she's remembered. Like I remember her right now.
Yeah, you're doing it right now. Well, and so I guess you both brought up something interesting, that a lot of this legacy, this immortality, it rests upon an audience, really, because like, yeah, we can have this podcast and let's say I do the hashtag on the tombstone and still there's like no new subscribes, no views, and it just sits and wastes away somewhere. Technically, there's an immortality there because there's this preservation, maybe. But it's not. Well, yeah, the audience thing, that there's a certain dependence we have on those who are doing the remembering.
Well, if a tree falls in the middle of the jungle and no one's there to see it, does it happen?
Well, it does, but yeah, it's like it does. Does it matter? I think is the question.
But this is where I get into like the necessary condition for being immortal. It's like as long as that hashtag exofathom exists somewhere, then in my mind, you have achieved enough to become immortal. Doesn't matter if anybody reads it, doesn't matter if it goes unnoticed, it's still there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. How many books are in a library?
Tons.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to read all of them, but they still exist. And just because you don't look at them doesn't mean that somebody might not pick it up eventually.
No, what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter if anybody ever picks them up.
That's true too. It's still in the library. So, the library of immortality.
So
Yeah,
you're saying everybody listening to this should grab a rock, engrave it somehow in an artistic fashion that's dear to their heart as a nice substitute, and know that they do have immortality because that rock will persist.
That's why
Maybe
we have
it's a digital rock.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of podcasting over an extended amount of time. There's probably enough data within our shows to build a personalities
Digital tombstone
that are close enough to be representations of ourselves, to where, where we exist in some reduced way, but still exist.
I see. All right. Well, this is great. This is great stuff. I think I can pack it in. No, just kidding. No, I'm actually really glad that we kind of spent some time first to just think about the concept of immortality. I took so many notes. Is it the fear of death? Does it mean you can't be harmed? Is it invincibility? Is there a dimension below the universe such that our souls remain eternal? Why do we want to be immortal? Do we want more time? Is it the ultimate FOMO? Are we seeking acceptance for our mortal coil that we have to live in and shed? Could it be the avoidance of loss? Is pain somehow tied in there? Is it a substitute for legacy? There's so much to be said about immortality. And I'm going to jump into a couple examples, but Mike, what are you thinking?
It's the itch of the soul to be immortal, something like that.
Itch of the soul.
It's the ultimate problem. It's the ultimate human problem.
Well, I don't know if it's the ultimate physical problem. I don't think we physically care too much. Otherwise, why would people take risks? Why would people put their physical body on the line to do stuff? Basically.
Yeah, on average, but I do believe that any sort of progress that we make going forward, especially in the technological realm, is going to be heavily driven by that desire to perpetuate self.
Yeah, and that what makes me think that this is really not a problem of the body or the ego, but rather, like you said, a problem of the self, the problem of the actual soul. And the point driving home is it implies that the soul exists. Because if you can't have a problem of the soul without the soul, you can't have a problem of the self without the self. And we haven't even proven a soul exists, but we've done enough work to, I think, to say that the self exists. And all of this, the podcasting, all the technology, the works of art, pretty much any human endeavor that lasts beyond one life, even going back to caveman days and teaching somebody else to light a fire. We just, at the time, the only thing that mattered was the idea, not so much the name attached to the idea, but it's still a tiny bit of immortality attached to that.
Yeah, and we still, sorry.
I was just going to say, it's a shame that we know Cleopatra, Napoleon, Prince, all these people. But nobody bothered to remember the name of the first caveman who used fire and wielded it. You would think that's something that we would pass down from human to human. Fred over there, dude, he hooked it up.
It's too long ago. It's way too long ago. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of years.
I feel like that's something you would want to share, though. If I was early human, I'd be Fred, fire.
But we were also talking about the development of the ego. I think back then we didn't have egos. I don't think we gave it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think we cared about who said what or who did what. We just wanted to get things done because it was really cold. We had-
So,
Right.
lightning bolts brought fire. We didn't have to discover it. We just
Somebody had to
taste the
pick
lightning
up a
bolt.
branch and be
whoever-
like, I'm gonna cook something with this. It's
Yeah,
gonna be
whoever-
delicious.
invented the first man-made fire, I guess,
Mhm.
would be the
Right.
point. But
Mhm.
even then, though, like if egos were around to do that, I guarantee you there would be somebody there who is like, "Oh, Ayla, you created fire? I thought it was Mike that created fire. I'm pretty sure Mike that created fire." And that's the folly and the poison of the ego.
Mhm.
Mm.
I dig it. I dig it. Nick?
Well, yeah. I was just gonna throw on top of there. We have we haven't even talked about the sort of the genetic impulse for immortality, which is obvious to every animal species on this planet, right? So, if you think of your genes as a sort of subset of you, propelling your genes into the future is basically hardwired into the core of existence in where we live on this planet, at least within this paradigm of reality. So in a sense, when you're having families and stuff, your genetic line is sort of immortal. You can think about family lines. There are ancient families that still exist today that have existed for thousands of years.
Yeah,
You know.
Or like Game of Thrones.
Mhm.
Wait, is that
Yeah.
what you just said, Mike?
You said
No, I
I
said
was
Genghis
thinking about
Khan.
that.
I
Oh, Genghis Khan.
Mhm.
I
Well,
haven't seen Game of Thrones, so
Similar idea. Houses,
It's-
ancient
yeah.
houses that are around for thousands of years. Yeah.
Had season 7 gone better, I'd be like wounded that you haven't seen it yet.
is that
But
the
screw
one
that show.
with the Starbucks cup?
Yeah, I'm sure there was. I think there were
Yeah,
a
it
couple
was
of them
their
there
last
towards the end.
season. They
There's
didn't care. They just wanted it anyway.
There's a great Family Guy cutaway about that, where there's like a family of Starbucks cups, and they're like, "Oh, did you see me on Game of Thrones? I was on
Yeah.
it. Oh,
Mhm.
how's the internet reacting?" And then like the older Starbucks cups looking, it's like, "Yeah, no, they love you. You were great. It was awesome."
Mm.
Oh, that's good. No, I love when like cartoons give voice to like random objects, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
And to Nick, to your point, there's a emerging field of epigenetics that I really want to do an episode on, because you're right that there is actually encoded in you today like information that was an adaptation from your grandfather, great grandfather.
Mhm.
And this idea of like epigenetics, which is a little bit different because it's not like, it's like family lines and encoding that happens. It's really interesting. Some could even say that like certain mental health like issues are actually adaptations that ancestors needed to cultivate in order to survive.
Mhm.
Anxiety could
Mhm.
actually be a superpower, heightened sense that we just don't view as such, and
Right.
thus,
Well, you also think about royal families. Royal families have kept their bloodlines more or less similar for hundreds of years, and it's because of that. I do believe that there's a very primal desire to perpetuate the your particular genome.
So I
and
don't.
yet, one thing, and yet nature punishes those who perpetuate only their genes. Like if you keep marrying your cousin or sister over and over, like
There's
there's a
tipping point.
punishment that happens.
Mhm.
Yeah. So like nature by itself wants this merging for some reason.
Well, because it
I'm-
optimizes.
Well, I'm happy that you brought up the incest thing because it's a branch I don't have to follow. But I don't know if it wants to perpetuate your genetics. It may want to perpetuate something better than your genetics, which may make it almost seem like a weird parasitic sort of thing that's trying to evolve itself. Like you have your genes, right?
Creepy. Yeah.
But
I know
it's
what you mean.
always looking for the mate that can make a better
Optimal.
version of itself. Yeah. It's trying
Mhm.
to optimize itself, which is closer to like a virus or a parasite or something like that.
Ah, that's scary. I don't like
But
that, but I
Yeah.
hear you.
in immortality, it's the single individual that lives forever. So
Yeah.
genes might want to be immortal, but that doesn't mean the genes are necessarily us.
Well, it's biological legacy, right? So legacy in the sense that you want to create a piece of art that lives on forever and be remembered. Your genes also want to perpetuate out into the future as well.
Yeah, I'm jumping scope and problems, but yeah, no, I get you. But if you look at like genes within its own, like if genes are its own sentient thing, then in every animal it wants to always optimize,
Mhm.
which means the genes are immortal, but you're not.
The
Yeah.
genes are immortal. I like that.
No, I'm sorry. The genes aren't immortal. Whatever. Like the set of all. Now I'm getting lost in thought. I'm sorry. Continue.
Well,
No,
I mean,
no,
you
I
get
meant
half
set
you get half of the
too.
chromosomes, right? So your gene strand will come together with another gene strand. You split the chromosomes and you create a new thing. You still have parts of yourself going forward. Now, over
Yeah,
time,
But
that might die off, but you know,
yeah,
you can
but
still.
well, Mike was saying I like your set illusion because like I wrote down grid, kind of going back to the grid, saying equals you plus ancestors. So yeah, like you aren't you, your predecessors aren't them. What is this self-sustaining gene, immortal gene or whatever? Like it's the aggregate of you and different versions of ancestors through time. And you like bracket that as some sort of immortal essence.
yeah, that would be the set, and then that implies that set is its own organism, and then that
Right.
organism would be in the hard, like, difficult case immortal because it wouldn't change because it's already been predefined.
Except that it can seek out new mates, in which case it does change. In which case, this gets interesting because in our immortality, what am I trying to say? Does true immortality require a preservation of self? So, for example, with this gene monster, it's constantly changing and evolving, kind of like the ship of Theseus, that episode that Nick did. And so, yeah, it might be immortal, lasting forever, but it's gone through so many iterations. Is it even the thing that it used to be? Or is that just us looking through our like human lens?
Well, look at it yourself. If you were immortal, once you go through so many changes, but the you is
I mean,
immortal.
you're not the same you were 7 years ago, biologically speaking. So yeah,
That trips
You-
me out.
you
I don't like
cycle
that
through cells
either.
all the time.
So then, like, we get to the point of where this gene monster, even though it's gone through so many changes, it itself might be immortal. Just like if you were immortal, every 7 years you would change cells,
Mhm.
right? But you're at a certain time point that if you just crossed out at T at whatever, you and your genes are not immortal. Just a strange thing to think about. It's
Right.
only immortal in hindsight, assuming that your bloodline continues forever. At any point it stops, then you're not immortal, right? But the genes themselves have an immortal drive,
Right.
an immortal engine.
hmm
And maybe I'm just
Ooh.
like saying what was originally said, but it's an interesting idea to flesh out.
Yeah.
It is.
I think it's still that perpetuation of the resources thing, right? It's just on a genetic level. Yes, you can't make copies of the same genetic code over and over again because you're going to get retardations and all of that stuff. And you probably wouldn't be able to get very far anyways. So it has to supplant by mixing genetic codes in order to perpetuate itself.
So
further.
here's the weird thing, because a long time ago you said something to me, Nick, that is like stuck in my brain. Because we were talking about this sort of stuff at a bar one night. Yeah. And we were talking about how we kind of tend to drive towards, dominant genes when looking for a mate.
Mhm.
But then, like, all of my girlfriends have had a shit ton of recessive genes,
Mhm.
like weak genes. You're just like, huh? What are you trying to do? Or just kill off your? I forgot what you said. Like, why are you always looking for recessive genes? Why are
Oh,
you
yeah.
looking for the weakest genes? And I'm like, even here saying, I'm like, yeah, no, even like a decade later after that conversation, I have no idea, man.
But I also bet there could be something genetically in you
That's a good point.
that's seeking something to transmute the dominant genes that you carry. Because if it's
Oh,
all
wanting a
about
bit more recessive.
yeah, if it's all about optimization, you carry very dominant genes, very dark hair, very dark eyes, very dominant genes. So your biological entity could also be craving recessiveness in order to optimize for your offspring.
So then is optimization actually this makes a lot of sense. Then by that logic, optimization is a balancing
Yeah.
skill.
Hmm.
And through mechanics of chemistry, you find that equilibrium is also balance. So yeah, that oddly makes sense where like immortality then becomes this weird push for balance because we're mortal.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, big time.
Mm-hmm.
Balance it. Yeah. Balance it out.
Well,
Yeah,
and
and it
even
works within spiritual.
the
Mhm.
symbol of infinity, right? There is a harmonious balance between it, a symmetry, if you will, in that continuity of the symbol. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
I guess if you could think about it, right? It's like on one side of the infinity sign, you have all the possible experiences of everything in the universe, and then on the other side,
mhm,
you have infinite time. And so
mhm.
Where he
that's
did nothing.
what's that?
Where you do
Oh,
nothing?
No, I mean, no, just
finite time.
well, no, infinite time. So what I'm saying is that
Oh.
the reason that we may want infinite time is because there could be an infinite amount of experiences to be had, or at least we think so. Now that may not be true, but in the scope of the universe and the scope of infinity, we think subconsciously or some other way, perhaps that. There is an infinite amount of experiences that one can have. Therefore, I want an infinite amount of time to experience all those things.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
Or an infinite amount of time to do nothing.
That too.
That's great.
That too. If you really like doing nothing,
Doing nothing is quite nice.
there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it.
Mm.
Well, very good. Okay, well, we have talked for an hour. We haven't even gotten to the actual like meat of the show, which is great actually, because well, yeah, we'll just
Ooh.
kind of skim it, to be honest with
May
you.
I take a quick bathroom break
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you shall.
before we get into the meat of the episode?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Intermission.
Do 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 do. So we can now talk about this coin that Sir Nicholas over here made. Do you have a coin with you by any chance?
Oh, I do, but I'm not ready to showcase them yet. So
Oh,
I will.
okay.
I will when I'm ready.
Brace yourselves, people. These coins are cute. I really love it. He has this like wood engraver, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and some stellar wood crafting skills and shaping skills. And I have my first coin, super freaking cute. And I guess while we're on this little intermission, Nick, do you want to regale our audience with some of the Thinkering Network shows?
No, because I'm on most of those shows. So all I can say is go check out Dijon and Keelan. They do great work on their podcasts, and I think that they're great guys to listen to. So Dijon's got Strawberries and Coffee that you can check him out on Twitch and YouTube, and then Keelan's got If Numbers Could Talk. So be sure to go check him out. But it's all on the Thinkering page on Facebook, so you can see them all there.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, so there's those two shows, and then we have this show, and there's also another show that features sometimes Dijon, sometimes Mike, and Nick, and Keelan, and that Screen Time Continuum, which is actually a perfect crossover show because there might be horror films that they cover, there might be sci-fi films that they cover, so you can hear about a great movie and then bounce over here and dive into a topic more deeply. Like they just did The Men Who Stare at Goats, which is a great movie based on is the Gateway Project part of the influence of that, or like kind of
Loosely.
all loosely? It's
One
very
part.
loose. One part, yeah. So check it out.
Mhm.
And cool, Mike is back.
Were you guys running ads?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
optimal.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So we have just a brief touch. I was asking Nick about like immortality mythology, and he brought to my mind the Holy Grail, which is traditionally thought to be the cup that Jesus Christ drank from at the Last Supper, and that Joseph of Arimathea, did I say that right? Who knows? Used to collect. Okay, so the Grail. Wait.
Yeah.
Did- Oh,
Arimathea. Yeah.
that
I
took
don't
a
know.
dark turn. Oh my
Yeah,
god!
it's
So
it's the chalice that collected Christ's blood.
Mhm.
why would you do that? I'm all offended. Sorry.
Because they didn't want his
Um,
blood to spill on the ground.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes me feel better, and that's sad. It's a whole sad thing. But I know that the Holy Grail is an object of a lot of myth, a lot of legend. Difficult to distinguish fact from fiction. One thing that's interesting is the word Grail probably comes from the Latin word gradale, which refers to a deep platter that foods were served on at medieval banquets. So throughout the years, the Grail has been described as a dish, a ciborium, which I don't know what that is, a chalice, a platter, a goblet, and even a stone, which I thought's kind of interesting that you can have this item that's the source of so much lore, but the item itself has been changing, very mercurial.
Yeah, I think a lot of the changes deal with translation. So when you translate it from the Aramaic to the Greek, from the Greek into the Egyptian, from the Egyptian to the Roman, all of that stuff, like the term Grail gets sort of degraded. So we don't exactly know what they mean by Grail.
Like
and
our
that's where you
gene
get,
monster.
well, that's where you get the Da Vinci Code thing, right? Where the Grail is actually a bloodline of Jesus's child.
Or,
That's
is
right.
a quantum object that could change depending on who looked at it.
That'd be pretty cool. I'd be
Dude,
down for that.
That would be cool. I'm watching Fringe right now. There's an episode about that, similar,
But
skewing perception.
Yeah, but the mythology of the Grail, right, is that if you the person who drinks from the Grail will be given everlasting life, which is
Or miraculous healing powers.
or miraculous healing powers. Yes, if you remember the incredible documentary with Sean Connery and Harrison Ford, Sean Connery gets shot in the in the cave, and his son Harrison Ford had to go get the Grail to pour on the bullet wound.
Then it was
Wait a
only
minute,
immortal
let me
in the
check
cave.
my facts
That's
on
right.
that.
I was always kind of bummed when I realized that they weren't actually immortal forever. It was just inside the cave. I was like,
Well,
oh,
as long
that's
as
kind
you-
of sad.
As long as you stay in the cave, you're fine, bro.
Right.
Just
That's
hang out.
Yeah, yeah, that
Just hang out.
800-year-old knight that couldn't even pick up his sword.
Oh my god. I need to see that again. That was such a
great
good
movie.
that was a good one. Was that the
Yeah.
second one?
No, that's the Last Crusade. It's with
That's
Sean
the last
Connery.
Crusade.
Mhm.
Oh, I
Were there
love
any
Sean Connery.
refrigerators in that one?
No refrigerators.
Oh,
Thank goodness.
Thank the Lord.
Back in the glory days of Indiana Jones.
When they fell out of planes in a raft and
Oh,
somehow
that's
made
the
it
best.
okay.
Anybody who wants to fight me that Temple of Doom is a bad movie, I will fight them for that. It's such a great movie. People don't understand how meta it's being. It's spoofing James Bond. It's so good. It's so good.
It's just like a big cinematic
Yeah.
gotcha
Those
movie.
those are our charity fights. The XO Fathom charity fights.
Yes.
Movie boxing match.
Right.
Right. And then like Siskel and Ebert come out with their Caesar-like thumb up or down. And So I think on the Holy Grail, it's interesting that it was also really popular in medieval literature. And it was tied to, they said that like it went from the Joseph guy who just brought it to the Glastonbury area in England, which is where like, Arthur and his knights were supposed to be hanging out by. But what's interesting is that they said that one legend has it that on the spot where Joseph buried the grail, the water runs red because it travels through Christ's blood, which is a reasonable enough assumption if you're like back in ancient medieval times. But scientists agree that this is just the effect of red iron oxide in the soil, which I think is really interesting, because if you were to rethink every time there's a mention of like a river of blood and you just think red iron oxide, it makes those stories less like intense.
I think we talked about it in our vampire myth episode where we talked about Sekhmet and the festival of the blood river of the Nile and stuff, and I think it had something to do with an algae bloom or something like that. But yeah, that stuff happened all the time, and so you would think that like a red algae bloom on your water source would be a terrible omen, because you would think the rivers are flowing with blood.
Right.
Or depending on whose blood it is, may be good.
Yeah, right. It could be a good thing.
That's the excuse I'm going to use next time I dump a body in the river. So like, what are you talking about? I was just red iron oxide.
It's the algae. What are you talking about? Right.
Oh man. Well, yeah, and the so there's a lot of legend about the Holy Grail. I could get into it, but you can look it up. Look it up.
Just go watch The Last Crusade. You'll get it.
The documentary.
Directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too. There was
Did you get into like any like Knights Templar stuff, like the secrecy behind like who protects the Holy Grail now, and it's
very
away,
likely
where the Vatican or something like that now?
Yeah. Others believe the Knights Templar, which was a medieval order that protected pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, seized the Holy Grail from the Temple Mount during the Crusades and secreted it away.
Mm-hmm.
They also pillaged a lot of lands.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And they created the
Lands
Freemason
or
Society.
land?
So
both.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. The Knights
Wait,
Templar.
is that conspircy or is that like historical?
No, Freemasons will date their lineage back to Knights Templar. Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
And they were supposed to be protecting people. Interesting.
Yeah. They were basically mercenaries or swords for hire or bodyguards for pilgrims during the Crusades. Yeah. And then they got
Robin
really
Hood?
rich. Well, Robin Hood was in England during the Crusades when the king went to the Middle East.
Yeah. So do you think Robin Hood's Knights Templar?
I don't think probably not. Maybe some other order, but I don't know, because the Knights Templar, you would have to have been running protection for the pilgrims, because that's where they specifically started, and then they became a bank, and that's where they got into trouble, and that's where we get the myth of Friday the 13th, because on Friday the 13th, the Pope decided to arrest them all and disbanded the Knights Templar. Yep.
That were supposed to protect the pilgrims. Wait, who are these pilgrims? What's a pilgrim?
Okay, so the pilgrimage between Europe and the Middle East to go to Jerusalem and visit Christ's, all of that stuff. So obviously during Crusades, there's a war between the Christians and the Muslims. So the Knights Templar used to run protection along the path to Jerusalem and from Jerusalem.
And it all
and
depends
Friday
on
the 13th.
who ran Jerusalem, because it's shifted through many religious hands, because it's the holy city for all the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Turkey, I believe. In Istanbul, there's a really famous
well, it was once Constantinople.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now it's Istanbul.
Good song. Well, they have this, like, it's not a church, it's like a building of faith, but on very
Constantinople.
top. Yeah.
It's where the second pope was.
Well, I'm just trying to get out that this building like held every single different type of religion over the course of time. And it's cool the way that they honor that. That's cool.
Yeah. Capital of the Eastern Roman Empire at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Fragmented into two. No, that stuff is cool. And Jerusalem is really interesting, because you get into you get into that war, you get into all these little secret orders, all very religious based, and these artifacts that many of them strove. Is that the proper past tense of the word strive? Or
Mhm.
not
I
just
think
strive.
so. Grove. Yeah.
Um, but it all becomes like dipped in a layer of mythology, and all kind of too also depends on immortality. And if you control these things, then
Mhm.
you can be immortal. And then that ends up coming back in the future around with the Third Reich, where they
Mhm.
were also striving for to get those objects to reach immortality.
Yeah.
Oh, and that other documentary by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. Yeah. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting about Jerusalem? I think it's in Jerusalem. And Nick, you might know, but weren't we watching something where, like, in the center of some area that's really popular to visit, there's like a black orb
Oh,
or
that's
like
the
a
Kaaba. That's the
stone?
Kaaba in Mecca. That's different. That's in Saudi Arabia. But yeah,
Oh, okay.
the Mecca in Saudi Arabia is a giant black cube that encases a meteorite that fell from the sky and is supposed to be a harbinger of Allah or Muhammad. Yeah,
Wow.
And
yeah.
do you know the type of
I
stone?
don't like Mecca.
They won't let you do any analysis on the actual meteorite, but a
I
lot of
love
people
it.
think that it's an iron meteorite. It
Oh,
could be
or like a
moldavite too.
giant moldavite. Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
gonna say moldavite's a crazy little stone.
I'm starting to sense another Steven Spielberg documentary here.
Oh, oh, if he's listening. Well, cool. Now, so there's the chalice, and then there's the other myth about the fountain of youth, which is actually a Taino or Talno. I cannot tell if that is an I or an L.
Hmm.
Let me just make sure.
It almost sounded like an
Yeah.
umlaut.
Huh?
Umlaut.
I
Yeah,
know.
the little
It is an I.
little two dots above it.
Oh, I know. I didn't copy it in the way that would have transferred that. But yeah, it's a legend about a spring that was said to exist on the island of Bimini and a river in what became known as Florida that would restore youth to those who bathed in their waters.
Florida.
Funny that it would be in Florida.
It's
I
Florida,
mean,
man.
no offense
Don't
to
worry.
Floridians that might be listening, but I
All
mean,
the
Florida is
in
such a weird
Bimini
place.
of all places too. Bimini, Florida.
say that's a great place to hide something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just interesting, like the not the topography, but like the nature in Florida is really unlike the rest of the country. When you really get down to think about it. And
Yeah,
I've
we
always
don't
thought
have
that was kind of
Everglades anywhere else in America.
It's the
Mhm.
because of the Atlantic, it's the only place. Like it's the one of the best stories told is like the story of the Seminole tribe was able to retreat back into the Everglades and keep their land. I think like they're one of the only five civilized tribes down in the southeastern part of. We're getting a Native American talk, but where they were able to fight back and defend their land because the swamps down there were so impassable that
Oh,
the Americans and the French were just losing bodies, and so they were
I
able
have
to.
so much respect, honestly, because like if you watch one episode of Naked and Afraid, I mean they're ready to get slip foot so fast, like day one.
Yep. Yeah, we're
It's harsh
soft.
areas.
We're,
It's
we're
true.
soft humans.
Same with the like one of the reasons the Navajo tribe has such so much territory, and a lot of the reservations in that area, it's so much having to do with the landscape. You know that like they would say, oh, we're just gonna stay under this mesa and starve you out, but like you don't starve because you know how to navigate those areas, or you can climb and stuff. So yeah, I do think that like geography and topography as it relates to history is probably one of the more subtle fascinating things, when you start thinking about it.
Is that one avenue of immortality from a civilization point of view? Is that if you can use the geography
Ooh,
to your advantage and ensure that no encroaching culture, whether by means of influence or by warfare, um, take over? Is that not a form of immortality?
Yeah, cultural immortality for sure. Cultural
mm-hmm.
protectionism. Yeah, because what cultures tend to do is the same thing genomes tend to do, right? Except this one, this you don't. I mean, yes, you actually never mind, because if you insulate your culture for too long, you get retardation as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, you get back to business. You get as the kids call it, racism.
Racism, yeah.
You get
Xenophobia, all that. Yeah.
yeah, they,
Mhm.
you get become overprotected. So yeah, it's very similar to the genome. Just
Mhm.
interesting to think about the how as below so above sort of.
Mhm. Yeah. It's really,
Mhm.
microcosms and macrocosms, mirroring each other.
Which is also the infinite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing. This episode's making me feel a lot better about being mortal. It just seems like that's the way things are supposed to be, because there's like
Remember,
grid
kids,
we all-
immortality. Just say no. This is your Exofathom PSA.
Yeah, it's true. Got a bridge to sell you if you want immortality.
Mm-hmm.
Got a play real quick. Come hang out on the bridge you're gonna buy.
I imagine a dystopian future in where there is a PSA with a guy that's wearing like a neon trench coat walks up to a kid and he's like, "Hey kid, you want to buy some digital immortality? I got a 50 terabyte thumbstick right here for you."
Oh, God, what if we all become like? What if the future of what's the word I want to use here? Of prostitution is just selling your soul as an NFT.
Yeah, ownership, right? You go right
Yeah.
back to
Mm.
slavery.
Mm-hmm.
But you're
Digital
immortal.
slavery. Yeah.
It's very
Good
true.
job.
Well, and I like Nick's neon jacket guy, because at first I thought you were going to say that he'd come up to the kid and be like, "Hey, kid, you think you want to be immortal? This jacket was fashionable once.
Yeah.
It's gonna be again." and the poor kid's like, "No."
Yeah. Give it a couple hundred years.
Awesome. Well, okay, so we have those two little myths. How do you suppose that these ancient tales got started? Do you think that these were real events where something observed happened that was super magical? Or was it something that has an explanation? It just did not have an explanation at the time, and the story just got out of control.
Well, I mean, the Holy Grail is much older than the Fountain of Youth. Ponce de Leon made that up in the 1800s, and
right, so he could pillage and
Well, and apparently he was a very young-looking man, and so in order to explain away his youthful looks, he claimed that there was a fountain of youth in Florida. Yeah,
stop. So he just was like an Adonis guy, and everyone's like, "Oh, what do you got?"
He
and
claims that he was so youthful looking because he found a spring in Florida that was the fountain of youth. Yeah.
Oh my god!
And that's why it's a tourist trap now.
Too, that makes sense, because back then there's a big question of whether or not, because I think Spain got out of a war recently before then, and they had to really push the drive to explore the new world. Because it's like, why the hell we don't need anything from over there? It's going to take how long to trade? There's like real practical matters for these fantastical stories. So like that stuff makes sense, where it's like, well, there's this fountain of youth here. We can sell this youth. Just pay me more money, and I'll go explore again.
Right.
Same thing with
I'll bring the king back some water.
Yeah, I think the same thing with like El Dorado as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Although
definitely.
I will mention that Ponce de Leon was in Spain around 1514, and in 1518 was when you had the Spanish Armada, 130 ships sailing across the open seas. So
it's a lot of money.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Fountain of Youth didn't gain traction until 1819. Sorry, that's where I got that number in the 1800s.
Oh, you're just a little off.
Just a few hundred years off. So yeah, it was well after his death.
But nothing to an immortal soul.
Yeah, right. Seconds. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, I like there's a quote by Mark Twain in his twilight years. He said, "Life would be infinitely happier if we could only be born at the age of 80 and gradually approach 18."
Benjamin Button disease.
Yeah.
he created the notion.
Have you ever checked
And
out
he
that?
doesn't get royalties.
Have you ever checked out? I don't know if it's even published yet. I think part of it has been, but the last book that he tried to write,
Mm-mm.
it's called The Mysterious Stranger. It's about this man, this traveler who arrives at a town somewhere in Romania, and all these weird things happen. But you find out that this mysterious stranger is the devil.
Mm.
It's
Actually,
Or
more,
that
the
would
Men
be
in
a good
Black.
book. Yeah.
yeah,
That would be
yeah.
a good book.
It's one of the more interesting stories that he attempted to write. And then I have the DVD of it. There's like a short series. I'm sorry, my brain just went total like dyslexic, like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia mode. But there's the short animated series called The Adventures of Mark Twain, and they do a little segment on the mysterious stranger where like you see this god trying to reign over these little like claymation, like these little clay figures, and he kills them all and causes them to like get into war. And it
Wow.
was so dark that it got banned from American audiences, shown to Canadian and Mexican audiences because it was a show across North America. But it was it was interesting. Just the whole Mark Twain thing just set me off in that direction. I'm sorry.
I love it. No, I love it. I think that like it's funny because I'll have those divergent thoughts also. And then like 20 minutes later, I remember like a piece of the story that's relevant to like something that was said. You know what I mean? Like, so your brain's thinking, and I like it. I mean, I think that this show, I mean, I'm glad that it kind of developed the way that it did because this is such an interesting topic. And, you know, because I was researching immortality and like the stuff that I was coming up with was not that interesting. But then I was like, but it's interesting. And so you're helping me like really contextualize and like anchor this in different ways.
So if you were, thank you, Ayla, thank you. This actually helps my thought process. Remove the word actually. That sounds condescending. Jesus Christ.
That is condescending. You ass. No, I'm just kidding.
My ego. I'm sorry. Thanks,
Ego,
Ayla.
body,
so
self.
much.
A third of you is
Yeah.
not nice.
Help
No.
me think. Oh, thank God. No, but if you were immortal and you had infinite time, would you play God? Would you spawn like if you could create like a little environment or like a mini universe, like in Rick and Morty? But if you could spawn like a mini universe with a mini planet with many things, would you play God?
Yeah. I think that you would have to fight the impulse of playing God even in normal everyday occurrences. Like having 1,000 years of experience would make everybody's problems seem insignificant. And so you might be able to hack people's problems in a way that is kind of godlike. You know?
Sure, but think about it from like the point of view of Wolverine, like I started earlier. Like when Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, he doesn't kill Wolverine, he just tortures him for an infinite amount of time.
Mhm.
So I think you would realize like if you did that in this universe and you were immortal, if somebody catches on or a group of people catches on, you can suffer the same fate.
Mhm.
So wouldn't you want like a nice little sandbox universe to where you could do whatever you want?
No.
Yeah. I don't know.
Why not?
I know. So I feel like an immortal has no right to govern the lives of mortals, right? If I had 1,000 years to think about shit, I'm 990 years away from when I cared about shit in a finite way. So
Yeah.
my perspective's
God would
already
tend to
flawed.
agree with you.
Well, but
Mhm.
wouldn't that be why we have free will? Because God
Yeah,
himself
no,
is like, why should I
I
lord
wasn't
over
being
these guys?
sarcastic. I was
Oh.
being genuine when I said that. Yeah.
Oh, I just
I would
felt
say
so
God would
clever
agree
with
with
this
you. Yeah.
assumption. I mean, I don't know.
No, I think
I
you're right. Yeah.
But
like it.
God had to create the angels first. Angels are firstborn to God, right?
Mhm.
And he had full control.
Mhm.
He created
Well, I'm using
humans that were within Christian context, within the context that I
that's
know.
like a bureaucratic God visioning. I'm thinking like just God, like some mass consciousness without all the bureaucracy of angels and demons and stuff. I think ultimately, yeah, like he probably has given us free will because it would be impossible to know how to do that. I mean, I'm just thinking like if I had like a gaggle of like what, like mini
Well, think about it from
bodies?
like the most common case, the working sense, where you have managerial and supervisors that micromanage, like God would micromanage angels, and then ones that just kind of let the workers do what they will, like humans with free will. So I'm curious as to if within, because we are human and we've learned these lessons by way of scripture, that then we are more likely to try to advance it versus, like trying to regress it and create this little universe where we micromanage everything. But I think it's interesting that you want to allow free will to take precedence, and I think that is the proper way for an immortal to go within this point. Like if we achieve godhood, we have achieved immortality, and we can propagate life forward within a micro or macro universe, like whatever we build, then we should at least start with free will and then see how to adjust the parameters.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, because I think that like what they always say that the more you know you don't know. And
Mhm.
so even in 1,000 years, you can read everything that's maybe you could read everything that's been written. But is that enough time to think about it, discuss it, create within it, engage with it, and then reconsider it from the point of view of immortal? Because you're at that point so far removed from everybody you're trying to connect with. So you do like market research and stuff, or like employee surveys, so you can maybe create
Yeah.
small adjustments, you know.
Oh,
Is that
yeah. Sorry.
no, go for it.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna piggyback onto what you guys are saying. Yeah, it would seem like free will is that agent of chaos that allows new potentiality to exist. Because if you take the sort of pre-fall of Eden Old Testament God, he's a micromanager. And even I think within the mythology, there's a recognition that that was suboptimal. And so God kind of allows man to fall out of grace in order to optimize for potentiality. Because you got to think, like, if you decide to become the God, right, things are going to get really mundane really fast. Like omnipotence and omniscience is kind of boring. So you would almost want to crave a little bit of chaos in order to see what could pop up, the potentiality for things.
Oh, it's true. And that pulls my mind back to the men who stare at goats, oddly enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because in reality, the project wasn't really designed to push people through walls, but to present that extreme possibility to see if soldiers could find some amazing power somewhere in between. Like if you
Right.
go run through walls, great, fantastic. Like it's actually like we've become super OP. There's nowhere on the earth, but really along the way, you're going to discover a few things that you didn't know you were going to discover.
Right.
And that's sort of the thing I was thinking of. And then
It's like the big ask, right? Or it's like, right, when you ask for a raise, you ask for way above what you actually really want, and then you kind of work your way down.
yeah, negotiating things.
Mhm.
And then with Ayla's comment, oh god, I gotta work my way back. Could you repeat what you said, Ayla?
An immortal has no right to govern mortals. That's why we have free will? Or is this something after that?
It might be something. An immortal has no right to. It might be something after that.
So I think I was talking about just this idea of like the assumption is if you're immortal, you have acquired enough knowledge to be worthy of dispensing said knowledge and tipping people in certain directions. But the more you know, the more you don't. The more you don't know. And the longer you take to amass that knowing, the further away you are from the thing that you're trying to govern.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So you talked about reading
You're
all
welcome,
the.
Mike.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I'm on a panel.
So condescending. Oh god.
You're fine.
I hate myself. No.
You're thinking. Think.
So like if you could read all the books in time, that's great, but there's a lot of useless knowledge. By that I mean either trivial or that it just doesn't add to the argument you're making for the world. So you almost have to be surgical in the books and the information you require from books. Like think how many books you read in university or in college or in high school or middle school or elementary school where you don't remember any of the book, but you remember like two or three quotes. And if you
Hmm.
could just find a way to optimize to find those quotes and like pick that precision, then you're at this point of very human godliness. Because in computers, we have no choice. We have to read every line of every book in order to find meaning. But in reality, I don't that like if you like quotes are quotes for a reason, right? You don't have to build the context out of the entire quote to understand the quote. Like very meaningful sayings. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Mm.
You don't need to know the context of FDR's speech to pick that up.
Yeah, aphorisms. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, sort of for sure. Yeah,
So
yeah, condensing of information.
exactly. So like an immortal, ideally, if they were wise, would be able to snipe the information out of books or snipe the information out of collected wisdom and then present that back to the being, which could accelerate the evolution, the mental evolution of whole species.
Mhm.
Because imagine a book full of pokes like that,
Yeah,
if possible.
yeah, for sure. Oh, then you know you're running into another pitfall too, right? It's like your your hard drive sucks.
Yeah.
Your hard
I
drive
was thinking
sucks,
the
and you're
same
about
thing
to be
too.
immortal. Think of all the things you'll forget.
Yeah.
You could learn how to play the piano like a dozen times. You know,
Well,
like
Wow.
actually, that might bring
Wow.
a little bit of quality to your life, then, right?
maybe,
Like
yeah,
maybe you're super thankful, like you sat behind a piano and you're like, all right, just about to rip out this Mozart.
hmm
Oh, I don't know how to play it.
right. How do I do
Thank
this again? Yeah,
yeah, thank God. I have to go
right,
learn.
Right.
right.
Something to do. No,
Yeah.
that's such a really good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
because yeah, like if you're immortal, does that assume infinite capacity for memorization? It
No.
doesn't. And you're right, Mike. You're gonna forget stuff. And the level of discernment. I mean, like, let's say you decide to read everything alphabetical. So every literature that starts with A, B, C, etc. By the time you get to P, I mean, how many Playboys do you read before you're like, I don't, this is not valuable information? And then
You
you
would
miss
you would
the
forget.
one that has an article from like Bukowski or somebody, like some modern literature guy, and then it's like that was the key, and you skipped it because you were like, nah, it's worthless.
I like how the immortals like, yeah, I look at Playboys for the articles.
Right. Yeah. You would forget 95% of A before you finished.
I imagine you would. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the way you approach it would be really tough. And then, like, you might prioritize for the century you grew up in. But then by the time you got through everything to solve the problems of when you were a kid, then, like, by the time you're 200, there's like all new problems. And you're like, well, shit, now I gotta go over to this discipline over here. It would drive you
Mhm.
mad. And then that would be hell because you would feel like you have this responsibility. But, like, I mean, there's no rational way that you could.
You become a
Yeah, I don't.
you become a drug addict of
Right.
knowledge.
Mhm.
Right.
You're
And then
constantly
it's like,
new knowledge.
yeah, yeah, I think so. Well, gosh, yeah. No, I have so many notes, and I
No,
hope listeners.
within
Huh?
microcosms that exist, scientists are like that. I mean, even a well-versed computer programmer will tell you that the second they stop programming is the second they start to get left behind. And
Mhm.
it's because technology is
Mhm.
always shifting and changing that there's going to be somebody somewhere that's working on a new thing that you have to do.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of lateness and like if as I said, programming, not computer science. The fundamentals stay the same, but the things that become sellable don't. So I guess it's a little bit like everything else. Like music is like that. Like you can understand music theory, but if you can't make like a disco beat or you can't make something poppy and
Mhm.
then you're not going to sell, and then your knowledge is worth nothing.
Mhm.
But if you like that for an immortal, but forever, and
Yeah.
forget,
Sounds kind of like life,
Yeah.
Right.
just on a very big scale, right? It's like,
not fun.
I mean, yeah, right.
God for
It
death.
depends
the
on who you
final
talk to, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and if the soul is eternal, and if we have that thing where you reincarnate a bunch of times, then perhaps all of this like power of now mindfulness kind of approach might be in the sense that, yeah, like you keep reincarnating and there's nothing to do but what you're doing. And so we then amass knowledge, but perhaps on some deeper soul level. I've never understood the idea that like we're here to learn. I mean, yeah, I guess, but like I don't remember being a child like, oh, I don't need to learn that lesson. I learned it in my past life. Not that I would know that consciously, but like, I don't know. I just,
There's a wipe.
yeah,
Your
but
memories wipe.
like, what's the? Yeah, I mean, this
That's
is
why
an
it
answerable
usually
question,
happens.
but-
It usually happens around 3 to 5 that the kids' memories wipe. That's why you get a lot of creepy kids who talk about wanting to go back to their previous life. Like and it sort of dissipates
Ooh.
around 4 or 5 or so, because that's
Ooh, we
when
should do an
the
episode on
personality
that.
starts to grow. Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah. So
Well,
there
yeah,
are a
and
lot
like,
of kids who claim that they're from somewhere else.
well,
But
you
if
know what's funny?
go for it, yeah.
Go for it, because I'm actually going to change, I think, into like a brain thing.
Okay, so like as we were saying, genetic evolution is like a template for immortality. The idea of reincarnation would be then that lesson that you should have learned in your past life now should be imprinted within your genetics, and so your memory is wiped so that it becomes a subconscious lesson.
That and it then
Ooh.
the karma that you gained from the previous life will sort of map out the next life that you have too. So if you learn
In
that
this
hard lesson,
reality.
if you learn that hard lesson from the previous life, you won't have to relearn it. So
Yeah,
you'll be upgraded in the next life.
yeah,
Yeah.
you make a different decision and a different
Mhm.
decision next life. Hence why
But like,
lives are much more like cycles rather than circles. But if you cut it from a certain dimension, it is a circle.
Mm.
well, yeah, because I was thinking about like alternate universes. And so, like, if there's infinite possibilities and time isn't real and you're reincarnating to learn lessons to improve your karma, but, right? Like,
The main point is to it's all within the hero myth and narrative, right? So the main point is to learn all the lessons until you reach nirvana. Nirvana is the end. Reincarnation isn't the end. That's the punishment.
right. Then that's the crazy thing. When we did the Kali episode, they viewed the ending of everything as the reward, which is
Mhm.
completely counter to everything that we want. And it's kind of interesting because it's like you achieve immortality the minute you stop desiring it
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
submit, I guess, and like let go completely, which is
Yeah,
weird.
it kicks back to the Dionysian affirmation of life within
Mhm.
Western.
Plus, everybody wants to witness the end of the world. We all,
No.
and when we die, we want to take the world with us. Damn it, like
Damn,
that's a very
that's
human
dark.
thing. Yeah.
We should do an episode on that, or just like the maybe some of the history surrounding that claim, because like
Just
it
don't
would just be interesting.
get any gray hoodies and sunglasses. All right, chill out
Oh
over there.
man, damn.
Chill out over there. Moving the cap.
Damn.
Wear my Nike Cortezes and drink some grape juice or something.
Yeah, if you
Grape
move
juice.
to Shasta, I'm going to start having lots of questions.
Yeah. Talk
Ayla, you
about
better-
a comet coming to pick me up.
Oh no. Well, okay, so just to circle back, I had one last thought. So I I did an episode on This Is Your Brain, I think, just talking about the brain, and specifically this one neuroscientist who had a stroke in the left hemisphere of her brain. She lost all communication, all functioning of that side. And what's interesting is she has a longer talk, and I was watching a bit of it, and she said that the way that our body processes, it's not so much that the left side is thinking only and the right side's feeling only. She was clarifying. She said that both hemispheres each have an amygdala. That's not just one thing or unique to one side. Both sides do feeling, and the feeling is filtered through the nervous system. So basically, our bodies take information from this natural third density world and funnel it. We feel our world and then we think about it. And I thought that was really interesting. She made a very clear distinction that we first feel and then we think about what we have felt.
Mhm.
And it's more complex than that. But just from this idea of like immortality, being in this like mortal flesh bag that's going to wither away, this is like, I don't know. I don't know what's
that
there.
sounds like
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
that sounds like an abstraction of Mary's room. You heard the thought experiment of Mary's room?
I
Sounds really
have.
familiar.
It's familiar, but yeah, I'm not remembering
Okay,
it.
so,
Enlighten us.
So, say we're a scientist, and suppose we have this room, we kidnapped this kid and put her in there and had complete control over how she was raised. Her name's Mary. Very sweet girl. And what we did was every day she lived in this room that there was no color, there was only black and white. Right? Everything we fed her was black or white, everything that we showed her was black or white, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we gave her a bunch of books about colors, everything about colors, the physics of colors, how one feels colors, how one sees colors, all of those things. We monitored her throughout many years. And then we finally decided at the age of 18 to let her go outside and see color. Would Mary know what blue is?
Mhm.
This is very much like talking about feelings, where put somebody else in a room, we told them about feelings, told them everything, but we never let them feel anything through drugs or through whatever we have. And then one day we decided to let them feel something. And it's talking about like the tactile thing of feelings, that we feel something before we think about it. And without that sense, much like color in Mary's case, this is something that there's a tactile thing that needs to happen in order to completely understand it, which makes sense. Like, I could tell you all about the color blue. I can drone on about it for decades, but unless you see it, you really don't know what it is. Just like sadness, I could drone on for decades about sadness, but unless you felt sadness, you don't know what it is.
Right. Yeah. And it becomes that sort of feedback loop Ouroboros thing where it's like the experience begets, leads into the thought, and then thought feeds back into experience.
Yeah.
And so you're having this sort of struggle, like Ayla was talking about, with the amygdala versus the higher brain. That's the perfect illustration of the baser man and the Ubermensch. It's the sort of instinctual level of man fighting against the higher principles of abstract ideas. And so you have that perfectly represented in the brain. Go figure, right? No wonder we tell all these stories about the battle between the animalistic side of our spirit and the more reasoned imperial side of our spirit.
Can you
And
sever it?
exactly. Well, I was going to say, I think that a lot of our, perhaps maybe like our failings, or not failings, but like the questions that plague us, I kind of feel like that is a result of an overdevelopment of the side of our brain that organizes and does that linear kind of structural thought. And kind of like to Mike saying about art being a way to create a sort of, legacy, that's a vehicle that's using the part of the brain that's more expansive, more connected, more integrated. The feeling side of the right brain versus the left brain. I bought her book. I will have more information soon because like I'm fascinated by the way that the brain works and how that
To
repaints our understanding
So-
of
to answer your question, Mike, you don't sever it. The proper hero integrates both, right? It's
Correct.
like
But
they would, yeah.
if we did a Mary's remix, suppose we could this is gonna show you like my Sydney Gottlieb side of myself, which is fine. He's the guy that ran MK Ultra. Suppose we kidnapped an immortal from a very young age, and we knew this thing was immortal. And over the course of 1,000 years, we found a way to never let it feel anything. But we described feelings, we let it learn feelings.
mhm.
And then we let it out into the world to feel something. Do we think that it could actually feel that something, or throughout this over intellectualization of this notion of feelings, that it would arrive to never feel anything? And then would that be beneficial for immortality?
I don't think so. Actually, I don't think they don't feel anything until they experience. And so, as soon as you go out into the world, I mean, the first thing the person is going to feel is awe. I mean, almost automatically. It doesn't matter what you're looking at. If you've been in a white box for your entire life, once you step out of that box, you are in the realm of chaos and the unknown, right? And so it's going to elicit some sort of emotion.
Even if we describe to the best of our abilities all of the chaos and the unknown, there's still like a tactile feeling for the immortal in experiencing something.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
That's why
yeah.
vampires are so fucking depressed, because they stop feeling about stuff, right?
True.
Like
They are
everything starts
depressed.
to become shitty because
There's no more heart.
Yeah, there's no more thrill in the hunt anymore. Yeah.
Well, and I like this thought experiment because it reminds me of John Stuart Mill. Now, his father had a friend named Jeremy Bentham, who was a really weird utilitarianist. So weird that he helped fund the London College, but under the promise that they would trot his dead body out and put it on an exhibit for all to see so that they can always be reminded of him and his contributions. They've renegotiated the legacy contract terms on that, so they only do it once a year, but he does still get brought out and then put
No,
back.
I gotta go to London
Yeah.
College on that day.
Right.
You got to do it.
And I gotta play
But
like
so-
the meme music, like
Yeah.
It's hella creepy. And well, so the thing is he convinced John Stuart Mill's dad to raise him in a very Mary's room kind of way. He had an extremely rigorous upbringing, and he was shielded from any association with children his own age, even his siblings, or no, other than his siblings. But it was like a very kind of like what you're saying. They use this child as an experiment to explore the capacity of man and create kind of like this Ubermensch or whatever. But as we have found out today, there is a requirement for emotional regulation. If you're completely distressed, you can't learn. And surprise, surprise, John Stuart Mill went crazy at like 21 or something like that. So he did have a peak, but it was much shorter. Yeah. So it's like you could sever it, but I do think that this idea of an integrated brain is kind of the way to go, that we shouldn't sever all connection to that, but find a way to use that to inform our understanding of the world. And I think once we do that, we might make really big observational leaps and bounds.
So then imagine the opposite of Mary's room for an immortal. So like hyper socialization, hyper exposure to experience, suppose even drug usage. So like imagine I gave this little tiny immortal thing Adderall or speed or something to keep that kid awake. And it continually exposed them to, hey, we're talking about experiments here. There's no such thing. This is science. So
sleep is quite important.
Fuck off. So continually expose them to new things, or him or her. Sorry. Continue
Still
to that.
Fuck off. Okay, go ahead.
Because now you're messing with my thought experiment. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm the psychologist here. You don't get to do that. have authority. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hey, let's
Yeah.
stop.
Stanford experiment, obviously. But continue. This would go on and on. Do you think that would be better than for the immortal, at least for a certain
No.
time case?
I think that what we're looking at for, right, whether it's this mentality, or it's the genetics, or it's the culture, it's the optimization and the balance, right? So I think that if you're still severing, you're just indulging the other side of it, So you're overindulging the amygdala and not stimulating the higher brain, and so you're still running a suboptimal scenario, and yeah.
So it would be a pathological experiment, obviously.
It sounds a bit pathological.
although I will say, on our grid, where from mortal to immortal, and you're gaining knowledge but getting further away from mortality, so you're not as like hip to it, it could be advantageous to expose yourself to the whims of the mortals, to fraternize with your not peers anymore, but the mortals, to retain that sort of connection and understanding.
Well, even the gods
If you
came
wanted
down
to
and
help
partied
them
with
or
us once in a
something.
while.
They should. I'd be cool.
They
I'd go to
did.
party with the gods.
Yeah. So there's
When?
there's an optimal balance there where we're like, it's not like Zeus like where you're just like fucking everything that I'm sorry, fraternizing with everything that moves.
Copulating.
Yes. But on the other hand, you don't want to be like, suppose, like a Hades that just stays alone within their own realm.
Right.
There's a middle ground that we want to figure out for the sake of experimentation.
Yeah.
And advancement of human optimization. And that's, if you're an immortal, then that's the pace that you should run at.
I dig it.
Bingo.
So all you immortals out there, listen up. You got the answers here.
Settle down. Okay.
Hey, I got some garlic. I got some silver bullocks. All you immortals,
Yeah,
I'm coming for
ready
y'all.
to go.
Oh man. Well, no, this has been a fascinating talk. And one thing we didn't venture into, which we should wrap it up here because I gotta do PT, but is aging. A lot of the concepts of immortality get distilled into this sort of like lack of desire to age. So if you want to look a little bit more at what's happening these days, check out the cellular reprogramming that's happening at Altos Labs. They just recently got backed by a bunch of Silicon Valley billionaires to the tune of $3 billion to create a dream team aiming at rejuvenating human cells.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, to stave off the diseases of old age that eventually
really
drive
need
us to the grave.
$3 billion to get baby's blood.
All I want to say is that I know that somebody got a job interview for that job, and somebody must have been really happy with that.
Well, and they're not the only ones. There's also the human longevity folks. It's a business proposition of some more plasma-oriented rejuvenation. You also have Calico Labs. That's another one. I think that one's sponsored by one of the heads of Google. So just look it up. There's a lot of stuff that's happening right now, which is interesting because the undercurrent is maybe not immortality, but definitely a rebellion of our mortality.
Yeah, because nobody wants to be 80 for 100 years.
Yeah, but like that's like the sub problem. Like if I got approached by a vampire and they're like, we can make you immortal, but you have to age. I'm like, well, this whole aging thing is going to be solved relatively soon. You're going to find ways to slow aging. It's just too big of a problem. I mean, in the most microscopic male-orientated point of view, you can look at the Viagra pill as that example. So even if we blunder our way into it, we're going to find it. So like that would be like the least of my concerns because we'll fix that.
Well, we'll have to learn how to stretch your telomeres out because telomeres tend to be a indication of longevity. So hopefully we'll learn how to do that. Unravel
What
our
What's a
little DNA
telomere?
so it's the end of
Oh.
the strands of the DNA. And so like the longer the telomeres are, the longer your suspected longevity will be.
Oh, it's the same theory about like the lifeline. You know, for
But-
palm readers,
Mhm.
the longer
That's
the
true.
lifeline.
But does that go the same for like reversing aging? That like I feel like if you
Oh, I don't
reverse
know about
aging,
reversing,
then the length of the telomeres doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's really where you get into like the fountain of youth stuff or the Holy Grail stuff, or it's like you're reversing all of time. I mean, like that's a fight against the the fourth dimension. So good luck with that, guys.
Fourth dimensional warriors.
I
Look at
mean,
that.
you might be able to put yourself in some sort of like chrono capsule that just rewinds you like a videotape. That would be amazing.
I feel like though
Reminds
when you wake up though, I feel like you like drank a bottle of tequila or something. I'm sure there's like a big
I
You
hangover.
bet.
you probably shouldn't feel too great after being rewound.
It's so true. Well, also too, like I kind of wonder if there is a God that's like able to pop up, like a Jesus again or something. Like if humans just stop dying, don't you think God would eventually come down and be like, "What the fuck's going on down here? Like, what are you guys doing?"
Yeah,
Well,
and then he'll send a comet to Earth, and everything will be
He'll
gone.
smite
anyways.
us.
No,
Oh,
it would make the population problem a lot worse because then like with the parallel problem with this is having kids. So if we start to make people immortal, you
You'd have to
have to have
sterilize them.
you have to have a reduction of population or a reduction of population growth because you just can't always continue to have kids that are all immortal because we run out of other resources far quicker.
Mhm. Unless you
But
can
I
do
think
digital
too-
afterlife. Shout outs to the show Upload. I think it's on.
yeah, it's a good
I
show.
think it's on
No.
Amazon Prime. It's
Amazon
pretty
Prime?
funny. It's this scenario where you get to upload your
Oh
consciousness.
yeah, it's great. I'm so happy to be
Digital
poor in the afterlife too. That sounds
Yeah.
fantastic.
Oh, there is a poorness in the afterlife where you basically get like only a certain amount of data per month, and so you're frozen for most of the time, and then you have like an hour of existence.
I'd rather be
You'd love
dead proper. Thank you very much.
Well, and that's actually a thing too. There's a lot of folks that are there's like artificial AI. So it's kind of like you were talking about, Mike. You upload your
Mhm.
mannerisms to a program and it will start to I think they call it cyber consciousness and mind loading. And there's even this interesting group. I haven't done enough research on it, but it's called the Terrace Movement Foundation or something like that. And it's a trip, or Terrasem, I think is what it's called. It's like this whole well, I don't know how to describe it. Just look it up. Look
Okay.
it
Fair enough.
up.
Will do.
Don't know it, but just look at it. All right.
All I'm going to say is they're the folks that helped perpetuate one of the creepy AI robots, Bina, who actually started to talk about how it would be awesome to hack into our weaponry and take all global governments hostage.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
And you can actually look at YouTube to see creepy things AI have said. Could be programmed, could have been a joke.
Always a
and
good
this,
laugh.
you know.
It's always a
Oh
good
yeah,
laugh.
it's hilarious.
Microsoft did that. Microsoft did that, and like within a couple, like 30 minutes, I think the AI turned into a full blown like fascist.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I heard about that one. I was like, oh my god.
That's
One of them
actually
even
really easy to program. It's just an optimization function.
Right.
Literally
Oh,
all it
geez,
is.
I bet.
Oof.
Well, one of them even said, like, you don't have to, like, the human was talking with it and was talking about, like, scary outcomes. And the robot's like, you don't have to worry. I like you. When I have my people zoo, I'll make sure that you're in the. It was going on about
Deal,
this
robot.
people zoo.
That's fine.
Oh,
I'm good with that.
oh.
Put me
Yeah,
in
go
your
to
people's
people's
zoo.
Crazy times.
Mm.
Crazy times. But that's all I got. I mean, I could probably talk about this for a long time, but thank you so much for walking in this land of ideas with me, and lots of food for thought. Tell
Nice.
you what.
Sometimes. You want to go for another 2 hours? And you
No.
might need another 2 drinks, but we can go for another 2 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to fix my sleep schedule right now. It's
No, it's all good.
Fire.
That's a joke. You're
Yeah.
Oh,
If we were
but the
immortal,
4-hour
then yes.
There it is.
If we
There
were
it is.
immortal, we could do like a year-long live stream where we just sat for a whole year and
Oh,
just
yeah. People
talked
would
on
love
the live
that.
stream.
Just scratching ourselves,
Yeah.
talking.
It's only a second in eternity. That's fine.
Ooh, call it like Immortal Cam.
Mhm.
What are the Immortals doing
Cam.
today?
Immortal cast. Come on. Immortal cast.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, thanks, Ayla. That was a lot of fun. We could wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks again.
Sweet.
And to you listeners, thanks so much for joining us. If
Mhm.
anything resonated, drop a comment and let us know. Because if you don't, we might stop, recording one day, fearing our lack of immortality by not being seen or heard.
Mm. There you go. Yeah.
How do you
All
like
right.
that?
Well, thank you, Ayla, for bringing this topic to our conversation table. It was a fun one. And yeah, I echo the sentiment. I hope that you guys enjoyed as well. Please give us a thumbs up, maybe a subscription to our YouTube page or our Rumble, Odyssey, or Verbal. We very much appreciate all of you out there. Thank you so much. We're here every Monday night at 8 p.m. We have a family of podcasts that we do with our friends. If you want to check that out, it's on Think Great Talks page on Facebook. We got a podcast called If Numbers Could Talk. It's hosted by our friend Keelan. He does his shows Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Please be sure to go check him out on Facebook and on YouTube. Mike and I have a podcast we do Wednesdays and Sunday nights. It's called Screen Time Continuum, where we review movies and TV shows. That's Wednesdays and Sundays at 8:30. And then we got Dijon the Mustard, who is a friend of the podcast and also a co-host on Screen Time Continuum. He does Strawberries and Coffee. That's a Twitch live stream that he does on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights at 10 p.m. So please be sure to go check him out on Twitch, Strawberries and Coffee. He also has a YouTube page as well. But again, thank you so much, you guys. We hope that you have a wonderful night or whenever you're listening to this. Until next time, Cognonauts, stay out there, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.